Hi, I'm Shawn Lemon, and I'm about to have a productive conversation with Mike Vardy.
Welcome to A Productive Conversation. I'm Mike Vardy, and today we are diving into a topic that touches all of us in one form or another: digital clutter. You know, it's the invisible chaos that we all deal with. If we're honest, it can sometimes feel overwhelming, which is why I'm so happy to have Shawn Lemon, the founder of The Digital Organizer, join me for today's conversation. Shawn's a digital organization expert who's helped countless people bring order to their digital lives, and he's all about creating what he calls digital peace. And really, who doesn't want more of that? In this episode, we talk about the most common mistakes people make when it comes to managing their digital environment, why redundancy and backups are crucial, and how to get started without feeling paralyzed by the sheer scope of it all. So whether you're drowning in email, files, or projects and tasks, Shawn has practical solutions to help you take control. So grab your favorite note-taking tool, whether it's analog or digital, and get ready to clear the clutter, because this one is a conversation that you don't want to miss. Let's get started. Here's my conversation with Shawn Lemon. Enjoy. Shawn, thanks so much for taking the time to join me today. This is the perfect time of year. Really, any time that you're listening to this episode is a perfect time to kind of get your digital life in order. And it's funny because there's a lot of focus around clutter, you know, like physical clutter.
Yeah.
Joshua Becker, who's been a previous guest before, we talk about that. Courtney Carver, again, with her Project 333. We hear a lot about that stuff, but the digital stuff is trickier because there's just so much of it that comes at us. And I wonder, what was the impetus for you to take on this fairly, number one, gargantuan area, and number two, frankly, a never-ending one?
Yeah. Well, it started at the Apple Store. I worked there for 7 years teaching people how to use their technology. And I would see these folks coming in and they would be switching from a Mac or from a PC to a Mac. And they'd sit down at a table with me to teach them how to use their stuff and be totally overwhelmed with the clutter. And my job was to teach them how to use an app, not to clean this up and then teach them how to do it. And that's what a lot of people needed. You've got a few people who can just bowl their way through a mess. And then you got a lot of people who just can't. They get kind of tied up about it. And a lot of people were asking me, hey, can you help me clean this up? Since this isn't the format for it here at the store, can you come to my house? Can you help me clean this up or do this for my business? And I started doing it because it's both technical and creative.
Right. And well, I mean, you can be a genius outside of the Apple Store as well, right?
Yeah. Totally.
You mentioned the idea of digital peace. And I think that really resonated with me because, again, there is just a bombardment of things that come at us digitally, and it's invisible, right? It's the invisible stuff. I can tell you that, you know, we all need to have some sense of digital peace, but why did you choose that terminology specifically?
Because that's what everyone tells me what they want when they get on a call with me. I've spoken with thousands of people in discovery calls, and then many of them have become clients. And what they're all seeking isn't really ROI. It's not, this is going to make me so many more dollars. It's, I feel out of control and I need a sense of peace. I need peace of mind. That's it. Over and over again is this notion of peace. And it's because we've got stuff coming at us from all different kinds of places. And we've spun up all of these tools because they've all promised to solve our problems. And it's just made more lists. It's made more places to store our files. And we're just trying to get work done and have some peace in our lives so that we can go outside and play with our kids or do whatever we want.
What are the areas you feel that people neglect when it comes to digital organization? Not necessarily because they're just going, I can't deal with that right now, but it just catches them off guard.
I would say the folder structures and just having things all over the place. It's your accountant asks you to put stuff in Dropbox, but you use Google Drive. And so then you're looking for your taxes and you can't find it. And so it's taking you an hour, 2 hours, and you finally reach out to them. And, you have this whole back and forth to get the documents that you need just to send this over to your banker to be able to close on the line of credit that you need for your business or whatever it is. It's those situations over and over again that we just can't find stuff.
Mm-hmm. And what about redundancy? Because again, in my years of working in the tech space, I remember it was Alex Lindsay, I think, that said, if it doesn't exist in 3 places, it doesn't exist at all. I remember vividly that quote. And so again, it's that idea of, well, what needs to live in redundancy? Does everything lead to? And how does that play into the factor of digital organization?
Well, I always want you to have a backup of things and say, if we're going to move you into Google Workspace, I want to set you up with a system that will automatically back up that Google Workspace either onto a network attached storage device or just to another cloud so that you can restore it if something happens. But it's funny how little I'm hearing people say backup now. Now, a data loss is data lost. It's all just gone because we can't find it. And we have so many different versions that we don't know which one to get.
Right.
And so that's actually less a part of a conversation that I'm hearing from clients and more of, hey, this is part of the solution. Once we've got everything put in one place, let's get a really good backup system so that if something were to happen in the future, it's not there anymore. People are having a lot more trust now in their systems, though you always have those who've been burned who are like I've got to have it in a ton of different places.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, what about where people start? Because again, with any kind of new approach or any kind of framework, any kind of system, in my experience, people go, okay, I want to do it all. Like I want to get it all done. And that seems to be a recipe for disaster at worst, failure at best, or even just friction. So how do you recommend people start?
Well, usually I have them go through a process, and I've got a quiz on my website that you can click on that will actually help you figure out kind of where you're struggling the most based on how effective the process is or your process is or the lack thereof. But it's really figuring out what's going to give you the most peace of mind first and give you that energy and focus and momentum to go on and do the next thing. So it's usually email or files. Occasionally it's project management. They've got the other pretty well, but it's like my tasks are out of control. I don't know what I'm supposed to be working on next. Okay, we're going to start there. And then we're going to tie in email and files afterward, but it's only one at a time. But which one's going to give you the biggest peace of mind?
Right.
Is it being able to find what you're looking for immediately in your files, or is it stopping the tidal wave that is your email that hits you every day and you're just drowning and can't find what you're looking for?
Now, I know off the top, I said, this is the ideal time, the perfect time, depending on when, obviously this is airing initially at the start of 2025, the start of a year, but really, is there an ideal time for someone to take this on? Because again, we have so many obligations and things going on that I think you want to have some clarity and some bandwidth to tackle things like this, even in some small way.
Yeah, I would say it's when you've got some energy and momentum. And in some ways, it's always a good time. In some ways, it's always a bad time. So that's what I hear a lot is, oh, I know this is going to take me some time. I'm going to wait until this period of time where I know things are going to slow down. Well, that doesn't really exist right now. How often do we truly have slower periods? I would say the best time is when you're in the most pain and you're ready to deal with it immediately. You get embarrassed because you missed that email or you can't find that file, and the frustration, that is going to give you that initial burst of energy to get started on the project. And then hopefully you either find somebody's system or work with someone. There's people like us, me out there, and tons of other guests who can help you with this to keep that momentum going. That's our job, is to keep that momentum and get you to the finish line so that, you actually get organized and stay that way.
All right, we're going to get to the role of AI and how this can affect digital organization, because clearly that's in the future. We'll get to that right after these messages. All right, so Shawn, AI clearly is playing a role in many areas of our lives at this point. And AI is, it's digital. It lives there. So a couple of questions, and you can tackle these whichever way you want. I know a
Mhm.
lot of people get afraid that this is going to take my job away. This is going to remove me from the equation. I have a feeling you've got your own answer for that. We'll start there. Do you think that AI, as it is right now, will be able to replace someone that's offering a service like yours in terms of helping people organize their digital lives?
I think it's going to be a while because there are so many different factors at play. And while the models are getting better when I give it lots of information, it's still having a really hard time. And how does it know what's important to you and what's not, and what's finished and what's been completed, and what idea just went away? And how does it know what your intentions are for next, and really what's important to you next? I think there will be the ability to rename some stuff, maybe even just sort your files and categorize them, but there's so many different ways to do it. I think
Yep.
about Tiago Forte's and my method and some of these different ways to do it. It's just like, okay, do you train it to create a whole scenario where it asks you question after question after question? And that's where I think we could do it. And I would love to work with someone to figure out how we could do it, because I would love for this job to go away.
And keep in mind, really quickly, like tools like Hazel and things like that have done some of this organization. But you're right; it's not like out of the box. You either have to set it up yourself,
Mm.
or go to somebody that you trust, like a David Sparks or somebody like that, that says, "Here's a recipe that you could use."
This is It still involves you. Hazel, you have to understand all this stuff. And for the people who I'm working with, they are interested in this stuff, but they are not nerds. And you kind of have to be a nerd to use some of this stuff and to direct it and understand the framework. And I think AI can help get it there. But then there's the privacy and looking at everything and then moving it, and then the liability of what if it screws it up and deletes the wrong thing. And it's I'm always hesitant with automations because I've gotten into trouble and embarrassed myself in the past when you set it and forget it, and then it stops working for some reason, or
Yeah.
someone else sets it up for you, and then it gets broken and you don't know how to fix it. And then and I've had that happen to me, and I've gone in and now I am the master of my Zapier, even though I've hired other people to create the systems originally for me.
I was going to say, how you must have a recurring task of some sort that says, let me audit my automations, because you're right. Like a tool could say, yeah, an API could change or something. Again, now we're getting into the weeds here. An API could change and all of a sudden everything breaks or whatever. And you've got like a
Right.
tool like Zapier or IFTTT or Make or any of these other ones that we're seeing, that if one small thing changes, then the whole house of cards comes apart. So do you have an auditing process in place for when you're using like tools like this, that you kind of say, okay, like every 2 weeks, I'm going to look at this to make sure nothing's broken? Or how do you make sure that you keep tabs on that?
Well, I've basically just been in there a lot lately,
Mm-hmm.
and I get email alerts when things go wrong. And I haven't set up a recurring, but I'm probably going to do it for every couple of weeks, because I just had something with my quiz that I made a small change and I didn't realize that it messed up the logic and wouldn't let people progress unless they booked a call with me. It's like, oh my gosh, how embarrassing. So, that was one of those things that, in some ways it's hard when you have so many, because there's so many different places to check. But yeah, every couple of weeks would be good thing. I'd probably make it 3, just because every 2 weeks I'm probably not going to do it that frequently.
Well, and what's interesting is when you go through your website, I think it's reassuring for people who are not nerds and not geeks about this stuff to see some of the clients you've worked with. Like, for example, Michael Hyatt's been on the program before, and the Full
Yeah.
Focus Company and all that. And they're listed right there. So people are like, but these are productivity people. Like, how are they not keeping it's a relentless pursuit, right?
That's right. And the thing is, we're not master of all of the different systems. And so, I've been introduced through Michael Hyatt to a bunch of different people, and they love that system and they want to use it. But there is a technical hurdle you have to overcome to be able to get there in the first place. He starts spouting off, oh, we use Spark to do all of this and send this over here. And I set up Google Voice, then off to the next one and the next platform or whatever. And he starts spitting off all this stuff, and everyone looks at each other like, do you know how to do that? They're like, no. And somebody finally says, hey, how do I do that? And he's like, just go and talk to Shawn Lemon, the
Yeah.
digital organizer. Talk to Shawn. They'll help you out and get it sorted out. And that's what we do, is more that foundational work.
Mhm.
So you want to be productive. You want to use this system, but you've got your files spread across everywhere. It is not easy to consolidate everything.
Mhm.
They've made their platform sticky because we have a consumer product that got upgraded to business. Then permissions change. And there's like so many things that we're dealing with on the technical side that the user isn't quite aware of yet. They're starting to run into it. Like in Google Drive, files just disappear that were put in a folder by a contractor because that contractor deleted the email address that they were using for that account. And because you weren't using the right folder, those files just disappeared because they owned the files and you
Yeah.
didn't even know it.
Yeah, it's fascinating because even for the podcast, like we created a shared drive, and now that we have a full Google workspace and all that stuff, but we are trying to migrate from the productivityist.com stuff to the mikevardy.com stuff. And I own both domains. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is onerous. Like, how do I was going back and forth. Like I have to remove.
I wish we would have known each other.
Well,
I
I'm
could
still,
have
by the
saved
way,
you so much.
still in the process. So we should have a call after this because it's not done yet.
We can.
Yeah.
I can help with this. I can make this so much easier for you.
Yeah, it's when you do a rebrand like that, because that's the other thing is not just lost files, but just again that breaking of workflows, and not just digital workflows, but the analog workflows that you're used to kind of going through. Both myself and Sarah, who's my assistant, just it's where's the thread, and just takes one change for that line to stop, and they're like, okay, well now what? And we have a multitude of tools that we use. But we are winnowing down. Actually, that's actually leads to a really interesting question about minimalism. Is your goal to focus on a minimalist approach, or is it more about working with what everybody is using and making that work? Like, are you about winnowing things down, or are you more about like, okay, what do you bring into the table and let's work with that?
Yes. So, well,
it sounds like yes to both.
Yeah.
You said yes.
So
like
I want to hear what you're using, and I want to know what's working, what's not working, and why. Because I don't really care what tool you use. I want you to use it well for what you need it to do for you. I don't want you using it for what it was made for and for all of the different features that it has. I don't want you to use my platform because I think it's the best. I want you to use the one that you're comfortable with and that you will actually be productive with and that you will use. Now, what I found is that the more simple it's, the easier it is to execute, the more reliable you will be in using that system. And so, yeah, how can we minimize it and get to as few things as possible?
It's about minimizing friction. That's really what we're talking about here. So
100%.
So speaking of friction, you've noticed, I'm sure, I know I have, the kind of renaissance towards analog, right? The idea of the bullet journal and the idea, I mean, I'm using a traveler's notebook, and what I do is I'll look at my digital task list and I'll go, okay, well, what's my daily theme? And I'll pull things from that, put it in my physical paper notebook just to further, kind of attune my attention to those things. Are you finding that people who are bringing analog into the world, that they're doing it either to kind of harness their attention better, or is it just that they're fed up about all the digital stuff that's going on and they just revert back to tried, tested, true paper and pen?
I think it's both, but the ones that I'm talking to most, they know that they need to use the digital and yet they need an anchor. And they're doing that naturally because that's how we've evolved is in working in a physical space, not a digital one. And our tools do so much that they are overwhelming. And despite my stuff being squeaky clean and extremely organized, I still feel overwhelmed sometimes with all of the different places. And I think it's just running a business and it not being so big that I have a lot of people who are handling things for me. So I still have a number of things that I'm juggling. So I have to rely heavily on Asana, but I love paper. to write it down and to focus myself exactly in the way that you do it. And that's what a lot of other people are doing. It's the digital calendar is the master here of, if it's not on the calendar, it's not getting done. We live and die by it, and we've got to have a list somewhere, but it can't all be on paper. I mean, it doesn't work that way. That's not how our lives work.
I want to get into the idea of avoiding the shiny and new, because we have a lot of that, and productivity porn, for lack of a better term, has existed for a really long time. And also I want to talk about the, kind of the idea of remote work, because that's also fairly new and played a role in this. We'll get to that right after these messages. All right, Shawn. So the shiny new, I mean, I was part of that, right? Early on, right? With the Next Web and Cult of Mac, like, here's a new app. And, there's nothing wrong with sharing new technology. In fact, we're seeing more and more of these. And I still explore new technology. For example, I'm leaning into Amplenote more and more with some of the stuff, because I was looking for a replacement for Evernote, as an example, and hadn't really settled on a digital note-taking app per se. But I know Amplenote is so much more than that. My calendars, I mean, I kept going back to the old Apple calendar. I tried BusyCal and a bunch of others, and now I've leaned more into, say, Morgan. Again, platform agnostic. I'm always looking for that now. How do you recommend, either to clients that you're working with when you're building their frameworks out and helping them, but also for the person that's listening to this right now going, okay, but the shiny new, how do you keep them from kind of the allure of these shiny new tools and apps?
I point out that it hasn't worked for them in the past. And I kind of dig into the pain of how that's working out for them. And at that point, really, they're already ready. Most of the time, they're ready to stop chasing the new one by the time they find us. But occasionally, they come on and they want to know what I'm going to recommend. And it's like, I got a few solid ones that I love. And then from there, like note-taking apps and Evernote, I really don't even want you to use them for most people.
Okay.
I don't want you using a note-taking app. I want you to take notes where all of the rest of the stuff is that those notes are there for. If it's your client folder, yeah. So, for example, I got a folder called clients.
Okay.
Inside of that, a bunch of folders for all the clients we're working with now. I got two others in there. Inactive. That's my archive. Thank you, Tiago Forte. And then I have prospects in there because they haven't been graduated to a client yet. And so got automations that we use a template for my sales script and the whole thing. And it shows up in there automatically. There's a bunch of automations that fire off when you book a call. But I take my notes right there. And then I keep taking notes. And whoever on my team works with that client, they keep taking notes in that same document so that it's in only one place. And, when they sign on as a client, then they get moved up, they get a folder, and then the contract goes in there, and all the other assets that we get or help create, they all go in that one folder. So it's just right there. If I'm having a call or pitching a podcast and about to have a pre-interview call, well, all of those notes should stay with all of the pitches and the outlines and the assets that I create to pair up with those podcasts. I want all those notes right there. So the majority of the time, notes are taken all in Google Drive, unless it's a sheet of paper and then it gets thrown away once I've digitized it. And by digitizing, I don't scan it. I actually type out the few relevant things on that sheet of paper that I actually need.
Yeah, the analog is the messy first draft, and you're actually looking at it from the vantage point of like, okay, I need to kind of curate this a little bit.
Exactly, because we've all got too much stuff. That's the problem. That's that new data lost. You got too much junk. Like, can you even read your handwriting? Do you remember what that note means if you scan it and just drop it in your Google Drive?
Yeah, that's one thing.
Most of the time, no.
That's one thing I've noticed about Amplenote that I love compared to what I was using before, which is drafts, is any jots I take. And these are normally for just ideas, right? Like, I have this idea, although, I mean, so those kind of things. And then what happens is it's automatically tethered to a date, which is great because dates are very objective. and the idea is subjective. So I can go back and look at the idea and go, well, this was like from 3 years ago, and this isn't relevant anymore. So I get context immediately in that regard. Whereas with drafts, I didn't, unless I tagged it, put date. So drafts was great for like scratchpad stuff that I didn't, but Ample Note gives me a bit more contextual use. Now, interestingly, we decided this would have been probably about a year ago when we really got into ClickUp, is that all of our document creation is in ClickUp Docs. Like, why would we go anywhere else? The interesting thing there, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is again, like Asana, you could do that inside of Asana too. You can have, description. Like it's a little bit not as, self-contained. But the nice thing is that if we decided to, hey, ClickUp tethered to my Google Docs or my Google Drive rather, and you see all my docs there. So the thing about keeping it all in ClickUp, there's one less click involved, but you're really hoping that ClickUp, and we've both been there, tools like they will stand the test of time. So what happens if that goes away? So
Yeah.
let's say you're working with me on this and you're like, Mike, you're putting your docs. Okay. You've got your ClickUp docs and they're tethered. What would be your thoughts there? We'll do a little bit of an experiment here.
Yeah. So my first thing is you need to know that most of the time when you're creating documents and using proprietary tools like ClickUp Docs, they make it sticky, which means it can be hard to leave. So it's know that if you put stuff in there, it might be hard to get it out. And some people have to, Basecamp did that. Box Notes does that. There's a bunch. Just had somebody yesterday emailing me, trying to get me to help him switch from Evernote to Notion.
That's a whole thing. I mean, with their proprietary file structure, that's always been a thing with Evernote.
It's tough. So I've recently changed my tune on this. It used to be, I don't want you to use ClickUp Docs at all. Like everything needs to go in Google Drive and then just grab that link and drop that link into your ClickUp. But then Annie, who does our project management build outs for our clients, she switched things up a little bit with a client with Asana. So there's a Chick-fil-A operator, built out a whole back office system for him. And one of the things that she did, which I was hesitant at first, was she created a template for meetings for for his one-on-ones with the different teams and all that stuff in the description, to have the meeting format and all the notes kind of like EOS style in there, so that every meeting is the same and the information is tracked there and the action items are tracked there. I was like, man, well, what about all the extra information? And I thought, this is all action oriented. We have different types of meetings. We have different types of notes. We have notes, say, if I'm creating an outline or a piece of content, or maybe I'm taking notes with a client. That's totally different than notes that I'm taking in a meeting for actions that we're doing going forward. If those went away, man, if my content went away, that hurts more.
Yeah.
So I'm actually totally fine with you using ClickUp Docs if it is more time-based information, that if you were to leave that platform, it wouldn't be a big deal if it went away. Or if it was extremely expensive to get it out, then you could make the decision whether or not it's worth the price. But for my main content, if it's for anything that's valuable, or that the other team that's evergreen or something like that we got to keep, it has to live in Google Drive. And then time-based stuff is totally fine to be uploaded, created in our other applications.
So this makes sense for us because we do a lot of stuff for our community, and that stuff's like announcement based that goes into Circle and stuff like that. We build that into ClickUp for sure. But the one thing that we are, and again, we haven't fully devoted to like, Mike, you're writing a newsletter, it's going to go into ClickUp, because there's a lot of content. So that allows us to create, again, this idea of, okay, well, for content that we may want to change, we may want to adjust, it's going to be quote evergreen or timeless. Let's keep that in Google Drive, so that way we can easily, change it, alter it, share it, et cetera, et cetera. That's a great example right there. What about the person who isn't working with people that are in their realm in their workspace. So again, the remote worker. My assistant's
Uh,
remote, and there's a lot more people that are doing that. So how challenging is it? And what are things that people need to keep in mind when they are working with remote people from all over the place when they are building their kind of digital, when they want to get digital peace of mind?
yeah. So am I talking to the owner who is collaborating with people everywhere, or are we talking to the individual who's working with a lot of different people?
Ooh, that's an interesting. What if let's go with the individual that's working with a lot of different people? Because I think the owner can kind of set the terms, right? Whereas it's the
Yeah.
individual. And I mean, I run into this too, where I'm working with multiple contractors, like, affiliates. And they're like, we need this and this. Like if I'm writing a book, they're like, well, we need it in Word. Oh, I hate Word, but I still need to put
Mhm.
it there. So let's talk about
Yeah.
the individual.
Mhm. So the thing that I would really want to focus on for them is helping them master the idea of shortcuts in their browser and on their desktop. Whether you're Mac or PC, you can download the app for just like you've got Dropbox, it'll sync to your computer, all those files to your computer. You can do it with OneDrive, with Box.com, with Google Drive, with ShareFile, all of the different ones out there. You can install those apps. And so it's just like using an email app where you can have lots of different emails. So you can have Yahoo, Hotmail, and Google and Gmail all in the same app. That's what we're looking at Finder or Windows Explorer. We're going to have a good folder structure. And so since you may be working with multiple platforms, you may want to create a folder for yourself. Maybe it's on the desktop, maybe it's in your documents folder, whatever makes sense to you. And that's your main hub. And you put shortcuts to the folders that are being shared with you that you're supposed to work out of from the multiple different places in that one command central, so that you just have one place to work out of, and it doesn't matter which platform you're using. So if it's Google and it's a Google Doc that you're supposed to be working in, you just double click on the Google Doc and it opens it up in your browser and you're off to the races. If it's a Word file, it opens up in Word and you're good to go.
I think this will dovetail nicely into my last question, which is, we talked about this. I think we've really focused on this idea of the approach over the apps, right? And
Yeah.
and I think that's where people get caught up, right? They get tripped up in applications as opposed to the approach to said application. So before we wrap things up, if someone is caught in that kind of chaos, that spiral of, I've got all these apps, how do I, they're not focusing on the approach. What's one little mindset shift that will allow them to kind of look towards, oh, I need to look at the approach before the application, obviously, other than taking the quiz and booking a call with you?
We have a process that we usually take people through, and that's consolidate everything into one place first, then start purging and then start reorganizing. So I have a guide that you can download. It's file organization guide, and it's going to take you through that whole process. And I've got visuals and videos and all that. But I want you to keep in mind that the majority of the stuff that you have, you're maybe actively using tops 20% of it. So it may feel like this massive job. Oh my God, how am I going to get all of this stuff put in one place? Like there's just so much work. It's so much here. How will I ever? I'm like, this doesn't matter. It does matter, but not all of it matters. Not all of it matters right now. So do your best to get everything consolidated into one place and archive the majority of this stuff. And I want you to focus on what is important to you right now. Your family, like it is, have you undergone a change and now it's more important for you to like keep some family records together? Then we're going to create a folder for that. What are the projects that you're working on right now? What are the resources that you access most frequently? And that's what I want you to focus on, are the things that actually matter to you. Let's stop thinking about the apps, what the apps can do, and how you're supposed to use it. But what do you need? What do you need right now? And what do you need to access the most? Because what we're building is a digital workshop. Just like a physical space, you set it up so that the spices are right next to the stove. Your knives are close by, by your cutting board and everything. So whatever you're working on, whenever it's relevant, we want to create little spaces for that and have the things that we need to do our daily jobs at hand. And the rest of the stuff may feel important, but it's really not. And you can find it, and we can totally work on that and organize that archive later. But don't procrastinate thinking you've got some massive job when really it's not nearly as big as you think. And of course, there's help out there if you need it.
I love how, the last thing we're leaving people with is it's not just about time management, not that you can manage time, but you can manage your relationship with it, and space management, which is kind of what we're getting into. And there's so much more we could dive into, Shawn, but I want to be respectful of your time and the listeners' time. So where can people get more information about what you do and keep up with the work that you're doing?
Yeah, the best place to start is go to thedigitalorganizer.com/a-productive-conversation, because that's where you can get this digital organization guide, the file organization guide, and you can understand the framework and the way that we're thinking about organizing things, whether it's files, emails, project management, or whatever. And we'll send you some emails on email management, how you can clean that up and stuff like that. And from there, that'll introduce you to more things that we do. And we don't spam our people or anything, but so you can get a bunch of great information. So thedigitalorganizer.com/a-productive-conversation.
Shawn, thanks so much for taking the time to have a productive conversation with me today.
Thank you.
Thanks to Shawn for joining me for this conversation today. You can get all of the relevant links, show notes, everything that we discussed directly on my website at mikevardy.com/podcast585, or wherever you are listening to this podcast right now, be it Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, where have you. And while you're checking out this podcast on your platform of choice, why not subscribe? It's one way to support the show. You won't miss a single episode of what's to come. We do these Flashback Friday episodes every, wait for it, Friday. We also have our regular monthly series with myself and Patrick Roan, where we talk about a specific word or subject associated with cultivating productiveness and managing your relationship with time. And then these shiny new episodes that we have each and every week. So subscribe to the show, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Another way to support the show is to check out the sponsors that you heard mentioned during today's conversation. Go to mikevardy.com/podcast sponsors. Click on any of those that resonate with you, and that way they know that we sent you. That's it for this episode. We're coming back to you with another Flashback Friday episode next, featuring the one and only Nir Eyal. He is the author of Indistractable. We revisit that conversation and we check in with what he's had going on since that conversation. Until then, I'm Mike Vardy, the host of A Productive Conversation, reminding you to stop doing productive and start being productive. See you later.